A dark-haired man with pointy ears and deep scarlet eyes gave an unfamiliar look to the man speaking to him. He could not recognize the stranger who called him by the nickname Bean Sprout. A strange vision filled the scene when the dark-haired man asked for the stranger's identity. It was that of a smiling boy who asked his friend to return with him. The boy addressed his friend as Brother Long and said he would be training with the Transcendent Masters. The scene changed to that of a silver-haired man whose eyes were like jade and had a melancholic expression. His name was Hai Long, and he had been the stranger who spoke to the dark-haired man, Bean Sprout. He desperately called his old friend and was in disbelief because his friend could not recognize him. The dark-haired man meant to be his friend levitated midair as Hai Long attempted to make him recall their friendship because they were like brothers. The dark-haired man gazed at Hai Long with contempt and said Hai Long should look for his brother in hell. The man nicknamed Bean Sprout swore that he would not leave Hai Long alive, regardless of his identity. Hai Long shouted with rage and attacked the dark-haired man, beckoning his friend to wake up from the stupor as both men attacked each other viciously. The scene suddenly vanished when a familiar pair of youthful eyes opened. The eyes belonged to a small boy who eventually stretched and realized he had been dreaming. The boy was Hai Long, who was 8 years old and lived in the Thousand Cloud Mountain village. Hai Long was startled by a voice nearby which came from a dark-haired boy. The boy addressed Hai Long as his brother and asked him to stop resenting him. Hai Long stood up and playfully wrestled his friend. The boy's nickname happened to be Bean Sprout. Hai Long complained that Bean Sprout had taken the duration of one nap to arrive. However, Bean Sprout chuckled and apologized for his tardiness. He explained there was nothing they could do about the weather and reminded his friend, Hai Long, that it was said one was naturally cooler when they were calm. Bean Sprout's actual name was Zhang Hao. Hai Long asked his friend whether he had gone to learn how to write. He said Zhang Hao might as well accompany him to chop firewood. In response, Zhang Hao said he was the laziest of the two and asked Hai Long not to expect him to chop firewood. Zhang Hao explained that studying was a much simpler task. He invited Hai Long to class whenever the boy would accompany him. Hai Long turned down the offer and said he would rather not because he would have nothing to eat if he did not work. That had been the condition ever since the village took him in. Zhang Hao insisted that people also needed to have dreams. However, Hai Long was puzzled by his friend's statement. He lightly hit Zhang Hao's head, making the latter wonder why his friend had done so. Hai Long continued to mock him for bragging after studying for less than 2 days. He teased Zhang Hao because of his desire to learn more as an excuse to avoid doing farm work. Zhang Hao fumed because of the mockery and announced that he had big dreams. He asked Hai Long not to dare hit his head again. Hai Long had a blade of grass in his mouth and cracked his knuckles mischievously while asking whether Zhang Hao wanted to throw down. Zhang Hao had a slightly irritated albeit determined expression when he dared his friend to bring it on. The boys brawled for a while and lay on the ground, exhausted. Hai Long sighed and said everything felt better after a fight. He asked Bean Sprout what his dream was. Zhang Hao said his goal was grand and asked whether his friend still remembered the transcendence that Grandpa's son told them about. Hai Long scoffed and asked whether his friend believed the story. Zhang Hao insisted on the story's validity and said there was a definite possibility. He mused, saying how great it would feel if he could fly freely in the sky and look down on the world's beauty. Hai Long scoffed and told him to keep dreaming. Bean Sprout said it was not just a dream because he knew where to find a transcendent being. Hai Long sat up with keen interest for the first time while his friend explained the location was right in the Thousand Cloud Mountain. Hai Long took his friend's words seriously for a moment until the final statement, which caused him to laugh. He thought Zhang Hao was out of his mind. But Bean Sprout responded thoughtfully and said it wasn't a joke because he had accurate information. As Hai Long focused his attention, Bean Sprout explained that around a year ago, 2 people wearing luxurious clothes visited their village, and Zhang Hao's father attended them. On that day, Zhang Hao woke from his sleep when he heard an outsider's arrival at his house, and he overheard the conversation between his father and the visitor. The stranger had told Zhang Hao's father that an opportunity came once every 5 years, in which people would have the chance to train with the transcendence if they made it past the barriers. These so-called transcendents could make swords fly. Zhang Hao narrated how Grandpa's son explained how transcendents ate divine fruits and drank top-quality wine. Zhang Hao hoped that he would be full of wealth and fortune in a few years. And when he returned to the village, he would return as a mountain of gold for his father and mother so they could enjoy the fortune. Hai Long grinned excitedly and declared that he wanted to pursue the opportunity. His declaration surprised Zhang Hao while Hai Long clenched his fist excitedly and announced that they would both pay a visit to the Transcendents in 4 years. Zhang Hao immediately agreed with the plan. The Thousand Cloud Mountain Range was located in the far east, thousands of miles away, with 72 peaks towering above the clouds. Some mountain peaks had strange rock formations, while others held flowing springs. The clouds looked like they formed bridges between the mountain peaks, hence the name Thousand Cloud Mountain Range. On the disciple recruitment day every 5 years, the clouds settled down, and the peaks shot out 10,000 light beams, followed by the dispersion of the fog surrounding the mountains. On the Earth Spirit Mountain Peak, a long-haired youth stood and asked why no one had signed up for the event this time, yet the mountain range had already been open for 4 days. The youth's name was Ling Yuzi. Another recalled with concern that there had been hundreds of people who signed up 5 years ago. Another long-haired youth completed his statement by saying the Thousand Cloud sect would not have any success if the present situation continued. Yet another long-haired, blue-haired youth dismissed all their concerns and cautioned that they would be in trouble if their master heard what they said. His name was Ling Tongzi, and he reminded everyone that patience was also among the things they were cultivating. His fellow disciples retorted, saying the sect had not accepted more than 10 disciples in the last 20 years because very few could pass the entry test. For that reason, the sect did not have any 5th-generation disciples. The pink-haired youth, Ling Yangxi, casually remarked that there was no need to complain because none of it was their fault, and he did not realize how strict the ancestors' rules were. The 4 young men agreed that the requirements of the sect were stupid. When they joined, the 4 young men had passed the test with much luck because the chance of passing was less than 1%. The Thousand Cloud sect was on the decline, and without any 5th-generation disciples, the 4 were responsible for the daily tasks and errands. Moreover, their masters and ancestors never forced them to take in disciples. The blue-haired youth agreed with the suggestion to check if anyone had come to take the test. He made a hand sign, and a strange symbol resembling a vertical eye appeared on his forehead. The 1,000-mile eye technique instantly extended his vision's range to thousands of miles. He scanned the horizon while his disciple brother eagerly asked whether anything was worth reporting. Ling Tongzi paused before saying that 2 little fellows were approaching. The 2 boys were Zhang Hao and Hai Long. They trudged through the forest with determination as they traveled toward the mountain peaks. One of the cultivators suggested that he would descend from the mountains to fetch the boys. However, his disciple brother discouraged him and said there was no need to rush because the show had just begun. At that moment, Hai Long encouraged him to persevere when Zhang Hao bitterly complained that he could no longer walk. Zhang Hao wanted his friend to continue the journey without him, but Hai Long had none of it. They had walked for many days, yet Zhang Hao wanted to quit at such a time. Hai Long reminded his friend that they did not have enough food for a return trip, and if they could not find the Transcendents, they would die in the wilderness. Zhang Hao complained that no matter what they tried, they never got into the mountain range, even after reaching the foot of the Thousand Cloud Mountain and having walked far. Tears streamed down Zhang Hao's face as he lamented that his strength had always been average and transcendence did not suit him. In despair, he insisted that Hai Long continue without him and then tossed his last food ration to Hai Long. The latter's hands trembled as Zhang Hao emphasized that he could not go on any longer. Hai Long paused momentarily, divided the last food ration in half, and tossed half of it to his sobbing friend. He had a severe expression and said they would rest after eating and continue the journey. Hai Long threatened to kill Zhang Hao if he tried to give up, leaving the latter speechless. Bean Sprout pulled himself together after a moment and smiled with gratitude, thanking Hai Long for caring for him their whole lives and defending him whenever people bullied him. Hai Long grinned and said it was because they were brothers for life, and there was never a need for Zhang Hao to say much. Hai Long held out a hand to his friend and encouraged him to finish eating so they would continue their journey. Hai Long was determined to find what they sought. Suddenly, a voice resounded in their clearing. It commended the boys for their effort as they wondered who the stranger was. The ethereal silhouette of a long-haired man appeared before them. The stranger complimented their perseverance and friendship. He said those who could reach their mental realm were the most suitable for the beliefs of the Thousand Cloud sect. He urged the boys to relax as he hovered on his sword. The man asked them why they had made the journey. In response, Hai Long asked whether they were transcendents. At that moment, Hai Long realized the village grandpa's words were valid, while Zhang Hao was speechless as he gawked at the cultivators. Ling Tongzi urged them to relax. He had a calm gaze as he peered into the boys' eyes. At that moment, the two boys dropped to their knees and expressed the awe in their hearts while asking to be taken in by the four transcendent masters. Ling Tongzi calmly asked him to get up because there was no need to rush into becoming an apprentice. He spoke as he gently waved his fingers and conjured a gust of wind, which lifted the boys to their feet. Hai Long was ecstatic and asked whether the technique was a cultivation art. He exclaimed that the power was magical. Ling Tongzi explained that they were immortals nor transcendents, only cultivators. He then asked where the boys came from and why they wanted to become apprentices. Zhang Hao explained that they came from a small village hundreds of miles away, and some years ago, they heard people say that they could become the apprentices of the transcendents and learn magical arts. Therefore, he wanted to try his luck. After the boys' awkward attempts to explain themselves, Ling Tongzi explained there was nothing wrong with wanting to cultivate, and he would take them as disciples. However, he had to ask something of them first. He explained that the Thousand Cloud sect only cultivated the purest Tao passed down from the original sect masters. If the boys decided to enter the sect, their cultivation would separate them from the outside world and their loved ones. When Ling Tongzi asked whether the boys would do it, Hai Long explained that he was an orphan and the only one in his family. So he would willingly leave the world behind if the sect fed him. However, his friend, Zhang Hao, still had parents. The latter's expression was reluctant as he asked whether he could learn the skills from the cultivators in only a few years. However, Ling Tongzi explained that it was impossible because if one wanted to see any results from cultivation, one needed at least 1,000 years. However, 1,000 years were far longer than any human's lifespan. Therefore, the cultivator explained that if one cultivated themselves, one would continually expel the impurities in their body, extending one's life. Thus, a few thousand years were nothing to a cultivator. Zhang Hao's expression was grave as he pondered those words. He said he wanted to return home a moment later and asked the cultivators for food. Hai Long remained silent and gazed at his friend. Zhang Hao reluctantly explained that he could not leave his parents behind because they would be sad if they knew he would never return. He urged Hai Long to cultivate at the Thousand Cloud sect and promised to return hundreds of years after his parents left. Hai Long immediately rejected the proposal and said he would return with Zhang Hao. In response, his friend insisted that the opportunity before them was rare. Meanwhile, there was a clamor among the cultivators as one realized they were about to lose both recruits. A moment later, Ling Tongzi urged Hai Long to listen to his friend's suggestion while he offered Zhang Hao the most basic cultivation method of the Thousand Cloud sect. This cultivation method would allow the boy to return after hundreds of years. Zhang Hao's eyes teared up and said he had decided on the matter. He encouraged Hai Long to cultivate well and not allow himself to be easily surpassed when they reunited. The dark-haired cultivator, Ling Yuzi, offered to return him to the village with his flying sword within 2 hours. Ling Tongzi reminded Ling Yuzi to return quickly because the passage to the sect would be closing soon. Ling Yuzi acknowledged the reminder and soared into the sky with Zhang Hao, causing the latter to panic because of his fear of heights. Meanwhile, Hai Long's expression filled with longing as he watched the sword flying away with his best friend. While Zhang Hao was busy panicking on the flying sword, he heard Hai Long call out to him in a loud voice. He asked Zhang Hao to return early. Otherwise, Hai Long would become his master. The latter promised to wait for his friend's return as the sword shot through the sky and across the vast land. Zhang Hao's tears fell from his eyes ceaselessly as he promised to return. Ling Yanzi and Ling Tongzi silently watched the boy beside them. Eventually, Ling Tongzi addressed Hai Long and encouraged him by saying that people often parted but would reunite in the future. Hai Long said that he understood and he would work hard to help his friend in the future. While they awaited Ling Yuzi's return, Ling Tongzi used the opportunity to explain a little about the Thousand Cloud sect and cultivation. He considered it the boy's first lesson. Ling Tongzi explained that the Thousand Cloud sect had 5 generations of disciples, starting from the founding ancestor, the sect elder, and a sect leader were selected from each generation. Hai Long learned that he had just joined the sect and was a member of the lowest generation. Ling Tongzi explained that if Hai Long cultivated diligently, he would be able to ascend to the position of a second-generation elder. In other words, Ling Tongzi and the boy would become brothers. Hai Long's eyes widened when he realized that he would become Ling Tongzi's uncle if he were to ascend to the ranks of the second generation. When he voiced his thoughts, the 3 cultivators before him stared for a moment before bursting into laughter. They found the boy hilarious. Afterward, Ling Tongzi confirmed that the boy's conclusion was correct and praised the boy's thinking. He said, however, that it would not be a simple task to ascend to the level of a second-generation master. Ling Tongzi said it would take Hai Long at least 500 years to get there. However, he encouraged the lad to focus on cultivation because the world was much larger than it appeared. He also explained that the Thousand Cloud sect was among the 7 great sects of the world. The other sects were the Lotus sect, the Pure Heart sect, the Heavenly Sky sect, the Thousand Valley sect, the Full Moon sect, and the 5 Transcendent sect. Among them, the Pure Heart and Lotus sect cultivated Buddhas, while the other 5 sects were regular cultivators. There were 21 realms in cultivation. While Ling Tongzi listed the different cultivation realms, Hai Long visualized them animatedly, and he wondered what the names meant. Ling Tongzi explained that even though they were just simple words, they would make sense in the future and that it would take a lot of effort to master each of those realms. The cultivators noticed the activation of a formation that formed a bright yellow dome in the distance. A dense aura emanated from it while Ling Tongzi grew impatient, wondering why Ling Yuzi had yet to return. Once the formation closed, only the sect master could open it. Otherwise, Ling Yuzi would have to wait 5 years for the seal to reopen. Ling Tongzi did not wish to leave anything to chance and asked his brothers to help him control the formation. In response, they said that Ling Yuzi owed them all a drink. Later, Hai Long watched the cultivators take control of the seal and delay its closure. He marveled at how powerful they were. At that moment, Ling Yuzi appeared in Ling Tongzi's field of vision, and the latter urged him to hurry because they could no longer hold on. Ling Yuzi entered the seal at the last moment before it closed behind him. He calmly landed before losing his calm expression, saying what a close call it had been. He would have been locked out of the sect if he were any slower. Ling Tongzi hit his head and, with an irritated expression, chided his disciple brother for always being sluggish. Afterward, Ling Tongzi announced their departure, heading for the sect. When everyone had gathered, he informed Hai Long that he would be traveling on the flying sword. Hai Long had a scenic view of the Thousand Cloud Mountain as they ascended the sky. After a while, he asked Ling Tongzi how soon he would begin training. The cultivator's response was disappointing. He told Hai Long he must be patient because he would first meet the sect's founder. Around a calm and clear pond, a man played a game of Go. His long dark hair blew in the wind as the tip of a cultivator's boot gently touched the surface of the calm pond and sent mild ripples through it. The mysterious silhouette announced that Ling Tongzi and the others were returning and had brought only one 5th-generation disciple with them. The dark-haired disciple's name was Ling Jiji. The master responded with acknowledgement. However, the disciple persisted and said there was something he had yet to understand. When the master prompted him to speak, Ling Jiji asked why the master never asked many questions about the disciples in the past, but things were different this time. The master had a youthful appearance with long silvery white hair and was known as the Pure Transcendent. He said that he could be wrong, but lately, he had been having an uneasy feeling. He had never had such a feeling for thousands of years. The scenic view of the Thousand Cloud sect's mountain range entered Hai Long's eyes, and he exclaimed at how beautiful it was. The pilot of the flying sword, Ling Tongzi, announced their arrival at the sect. He said it was the place they all lived and cultivated, while the boy took in the sight with wonder-filled eyes. The travelers landed on an empty courtyard while Ling Tongzi explained that it was the place where Hai Long would live. When Ling Jiji arrived at the yard, Ling Tongzi turned to greet his second disciple brother. The latter explained that the master had sent him. In the background, Hai Long expressed surprise after Ling Jiji appeared. The latter turned his attention to the boy and regarded him as the new disciple. Hai Long took the initiative to introduce himself and explained that he was an orphan living down the mountain. Ling Jiji asked the boy to move closer, but Hai Long hesitated until Ling Tongzi encouraged him to step forward. Ling Jiji stared blankly into the boy's eyes, making Hai Long feel momentary uneasy. The cultivator then extended his index and middle finger toward the boy's forehead as a mysterious energy encircled the fingers. Suddenly, a gust of wind gathered at Hai Long's feet, lifting him off the ground. The boy wondered what was happening, but Ling Jiji urged him to relax because he had no intention of harming Hai Long. The boy was intrigued by the sensation that felt like a flow of qi in his body. At the same time, it seemed that Ling Jiji had been assessing the boy's physique all along, and his actions were not merely a gimmick. He assumed that Hai Long had suffered much from childhood because he had a lot of impurities in his body, and his mental power was also weak. His present condition would make it difficult for him to cultivate. Ling Yuzi casually said that it was all right that Hai Long's talents were poor because he would still be in charge of chores as long as he was the fifth-generation disciple. Ling Jiji suddenly dismissed the comment as nonsense and reminded his fellow disciple brothers that they ought to know the importance of mental cultivation. If their master had the same thoughts initially, they would never have achieved anything. Ling Jiji then turned to the boy and asked him to remember that regardless of his natural talents, as long as he worked hard, the sect would use its best effort to train him because the path of immortal cultivation was not ordinary. At that moment, Hai Long felt starstruck. While the boy was distracted, Ling Jiji asked the other cultivators to take the boy to have a bath because their master was a clean freak. He instructed them to go to the medicine room afterward and get the boy a nurturing pill, and if the boy could not reach the capturing tiger realm within 10 years, Ling Jiji would no longer want to be acknowledged by them as their second senior brother. Later, they all went to the spring for a bath, where each envied Hai Long because the nurturing pill was the most suitable foundation for newbies. The boy was scared to get into the hot spring. However, one of the senior disciples used his abilities to levitate him and drop him into the water. Hai Long took the opportunity to ask about the assessment he had received earlier. He learned that he was no different than most non-cultivators. However, Hai Long was different because of the amount of impurities in his body at his age, which made him weaker than ordinary people. Hai Long was discouraged that he would not amount to much, but Ling Tongzi corrected and called him a silly child. He reminded Hai Long that part of cultivation was about the heart. After some encouragement, Hai Long received the nurturing pill from Ling Tongzi. The boy took one glance at it before popping it into his mouth. A soothing warmth spread throughout his body as his eyes widened with surprise. He was mesmerized and engrossed in the beautiful feeling in his body when his consciousness drifted to a distant place. He traveled to an ethereal place where a dark, towering silhouette called his name. In response, Hai Long asked how the silhouette knew him. The silhouette responded that fate would allow them to meet. Sometime later, Hai Long changed into his new clothes provided by the sect. Ling Tongzi praised him for the excellent fit while leading him in a specific direction. When Hai Long asked where they were going, his senior explained they would meet the great master and cautioned the boy to watch his words later when they arrived. After a while, they arrived at the clear, calm pond, and before them sat the great master. Ling Tongzi respectfully saluted the master and reported that he had completed the task of recruiting a disciple. The pure transcendent asked whether Hai Long was the fifth-generation recruit. He then turned to face the boy and said Hai Long did not seem bright. The boy did not speak, but the expression on his face betrayed him. He was in awe at the youthful appearance of the man before him. The pure transcendent asked Ling Tongzi whether the boy was qualified, and the latter replied affirmatively. He explained that the boy had passed the most crucial entry requirement for the sect, which was a test of character. The character Hai Long displayed at the foot of the mountain was entirely in line with the values of the Thousand Cloud sect. Meanwhile, Ling Tongzi pondered why the great master's tone was cold and intimidating. The pure transcendent turned to the boy and asked what he was thinking. Hai Long stiffened and said he was not thinking about anything. His response caused the great master's eyes to narrow with curiosity. He explained that cultivators were most against insincerity and narrow-mindedness. He reminded the boy to remember that since he was a fifth-generation disciple, he would take up the name, Tan. He stated that only with feathers would the boy ascend to immortality. Therefore, he would give the boy a Taoist name, Yu, meaning feather. He encouraged the boy to cultivate well with his masters from that moment onward and enter the ranks of the fourth generation soon. Meanwhile, Hai Long was perplexed that he had received a new name. When the pure transcendent saw the boy's blank expression, he asked whether the name was not to his liking. Hai Long quickly thanked him for the new name and promised to work hard in cultivation. From then on, Ling Tongzi addressed the boy as Tan Yu. The boy displayed his displeasure at the name, which meant thick jar. But Ling Tongzi laughed at him as he grumbled. Hai Long had been named based on the first impression he gave the pure transcendent. He asked whether his master could change his Taoist name because he was worried that Zhang Hao would laugh at him when he arrived at the sect. Ling Tongzi responded encouragingly and said the boy could change his name once he ascended to the ranks of the fourth generation disciples. Then he would be named Ling Yu. Ling Tongzi explained that a Taoist name was just a kind of nickname and a way to cultivate one's character. Hai Long's situation motivated him to cultivate harder. 1 month later, he found it frustrating that all he had done at the sect was chop firewood. There was no difference between life at the sect and the one he had at the village. In his weariness, he inwardly lamented that if he had known sooner, he never would have parted ways with his friend. Hai Long lay on the ground and wondered when his present situation would change because he felt enslaved by the masters. The ranks of fourth-generation disciples seemed like a distant dream at that moment. Hai Long wanted to stop doing all the menial labor, such as chopping wood and carrying the big basket of fruit from the mountain. He complained that all the masters looked skinny despite eating a lot. The silver lining he found with the trips to the mountains was the scenery. The view from his favorite tree branch was mesmerizing. The masters at the sect did not let him rest in the middle of the night and made him wash their smelly socks. It was for this reason that he missed life in the village. Hai Long concluded that he experienced the beginning of immortal cultivation. It was dull and tiresome but still a kind of freedom. He was lost in thought and dozed off until a tiny bird landed on the tip of his nose. Hai Long noticed the hue of the sky and realized he had overslept. He also did not have enough time to bring back dinner and knew he would be in trouble with the masters. So, the boy quickly picked up the basket and hurried toward the sect while watching the sunset. As he gathered the fruit in the basket, he noticed some movement. A tiny tuft of dark fur was visible from the top of the basket. Hai Long heard that many beasts were in the mountain range, and although they were small, their strength was formidable. He angrily wielded his axe to deliver a heavy blow when a pair of sparkling eyes met his gaze mid-swing. The eyes belonged to a little monkey who held a fruit in his hand. The little monkey swiftly fled the heist scene while taunting the boy and finishing the remainder of the fruit. Hai Long yelled at the monkey while it sat up on the branch. In frustration, he used the fruit from the basket as ammunition against the monkey. He hurled one last fruit, which the monkey caught and threw back to his face. The disrespect infuriated the boy, and he promised to show the monkey the results of his 1-month training. In response, the little monkey beckoned with a finger for him to give it his best shot. The little monkey looked at Hai Long with disinterest while the boy mustered all his effort to hurl the fruit. There was a loud disturbance in the forest while the boy lay on the ground in utter defeat. He had defeated himself and felt that the little monkey was some sort of monster. On the other hand, the little monkey munched on the fruit and stared at him. Hai Long was sure that the little monkey was an overpowered creature that appeared harmless yet hid a monster within its small frame. Hai Long gave up on recovering his lost fruit and resigned himself to a scolding from his master. He reluctantly admitted defeat, saying if it weren't late, he would have fought the monkey to the end. After delivering the monologue, he quickly got up, promised the monkey that he would return, and ran back to the sect. In a dark part of the forest, the little monkey met with the mysterious silhouette of a man who sat on what looked like a giant anthill. While the little monkey dozed off in his arms, the man asked him where he had been all day. The monkey chirped in response, and the man nodded with keen interest. The man recalled that the monkey had never interacted with humans before. However, things seemed to be different with the boy. Hai Long arrived at the sect with a basket full of fruit and saw his master and some unfamiliar people. One of his masters asked him to greet his seniors. Before Hai Long stood three young women whose names were Ling Ya, Ling Fei, and Ling Ying. They each introduced themselves and caused Hai Long to be slightly flustered. He absent-mindedly said they were all beautiful. However, his master Ling Yuzi reprimanded him for talking nonsense. Ling Fei said it was all right and that Ling Yuzi was too harsh on the boy. Hai Long overheard the interaction of the fourth-generation disciples before him and noticed Ling Yuzi offering Ling Fei the item she had requested. She sought 3 drops of congealed dew and, in return, offered a unique herb. It was a 5th grade of purple mushroom that could revive the dead. It was a priceless treasure. The uneven barter made Ling Yuzi uneasy. He said they all belonged to the same sect, so naturally, they should help each other. Hai Long interrupted and asked why he would not take the mushroom because the offer was not without reason. All present disciples of the 4th generation stared at him. After an awkward silence, Ling Yuzi apologized to his junior sisters and asked them not to take it to heart. He then reprimanded Hai Long for speaking up without learning proper etiquette. Hai Long helplessly tried to defend himself with swollen bumps on his head while Ling Fei giggled and looked at him with bright eyes. She then said the little disciple was cute, causing Hai Long to blush involuntarily while other male disciples were stunned. Hai Long was carried away in his thoughts before his master's shout brought him back to reality. When Ling Yuzi asked him to go back and cultivate, Ling Fei expressed apprehension at the harsh treatment of the boy. She said they finally had a disciple of the younger generation, so they ought to be gentle with him. Ling Fei then expressed disbelief at the boy's Taoist name, which meant thick jar. Ling Fei thought she had heard wrong, but once her senior brother used it to address the boy, she was sure about the name. Hai Long appeared frustrated and explained that it was only his Taoist name. He praised Ling Fei's beauty and asked whether she was over 50. Ling Yuzi hit his head before he could say much else. While being reprimanded for saying bad words, Hai Long was forced to apologize. He did so. However, in response, Ling Fei assured that it was all right and she was not yet that old but was only 30 years old. She also said the boy had some amusing things to say. Ling Fei offered the mushroom once more. However, Ling Yuzi rejected it. The scene made Hai Long ask whether the mushroom was fake. In response, Ling Fei gazed at him thoughtfully and cautioned him against saying random things. She explained that the 5th grade purple mushroom had grown on Misty Peak for 200 years. Afterward, the 3 women departed on their flying swords. Lin Yuzi was disappointed with Hai Long's behavior and sternly asked the boy to accompany him elsewhere. When the door to the shed shut, Hai Long realized the trouble he was in. After some silence, Ling Yuzi asked whether the boy understood what he had done wrong. Hai Long argued and said the women had taken their things. So they were only expected to give the purple mushroom in exchange. When he saw a giant hand fly toward him, Hai Long instinctively shut his eyes and apologized profusely. Hai Long begged not to be hit and promised not to repeat his mistake. While his eyes remained shut, he thought something was wrong because he felt no pain. The silence made him wonder if he had been beaten to death, which he felt was excessive. When Hai Long's eyes opened, he saw Ling Yuzi's gentle expression as he said the boy had little understanding of social norms. He slowly explained that although the ladies made things difficult for them by borrowing the congealed dew, they were all members of the same sect. Under the Thousand Cloud sect, they could not ask for repayment from each other. Moreover, the boy's attitude toward Ling Fei and the other ladies had been impolite. Ling Yuzi reminded the boy of Ling Tongzi's words about cultivating the heart while cultivating immortality. He told Hai Long that he could be childish but would eventually have to grow up someday because he couldn't be there to look out for the boy his entire life. Ling Yuzi threatened to stretch the boy's mouth into a rubber band if he repeated what he did. After the light-hearted moment, Hai Long rushed off to bring his master some fruit because he had yet to have dinner. Ling Yuzi called him a little monkey, which triggered Hai Long's memory of his little furry nemesis. He had made up his mind to fight a little monkey. This time he landed a solid hit on the monkey's face. Hai Long laughed triumphantly, saying the stinky monkey finally got his karma. The monkey chirped in confusion as Hai Long taunted him, saying he was not a monkey. The little monkey angrily glared at him and pelted him with fruits until nightfall. A year later, Hai Long stood atop his favorite tree branch. He gazed at the horizon as he thought about his best friend, Zhang Hao. During the past year, Hai Long had grown taller, and his body had become stronger because of his regular cultivation practice. Although he felt lonely without his best friend, he had become accustomed to the ways of immortal cultivation. While attending to the daily chores, he realized that his new life was not as dull as it appeared. On the contrary, it was interesting. The people around him, too, were fascinating. His masters all looked divine but gave off a distant feeling at first. However, after he got to know them, he discovered how friendly they were, apart from the intimidating Great Master who seemed to be the only immortal cultivator in the sect. Although Hai Long's master said his natural talents were not promising, he forcefully raised his cultivation by one level. After 1 year, he could faintly feel the heat flowing in his body while he cultivated. His master had taught him to use the heart to direct the flow of qi and let his body be one with nature. Once he could feel the flow in his body, he patiently allowed the power to gather. The qi was distinct, and he could feel his power surging. So, he hurriedly activated the self-made technique he had yet to name. He only referred to it as the Great Move. Ling Tongzi appeared just as Hai Long yelled, "Break!" Suddenly, a glowing shard whizzed past the right side of Ling Tongzi's face, causing him to stutter in confusion. The fragment had made a small cut on his cheek, and his body trembled while he stood in disbelief. During that 1 year of cultivation, Hai Long made a new friend who wasn't even a human. Hai Long had named him Smarty. The familiar silhouette of the little Smarty appeared on an overhead branch as Hai Long arrived at their usual dueling spot. The monkey stood with a proud grin and eager eyes. Both parties had come for their daily scheduled duel and prepared their ammunition. The monkey carried the fruit in both hands while Hai Long wielded 3 leaf blades. The rivals looked at each other with determination and began their sparring session. The little monkey pulled a surprise move by vanishing when he leapt from the branch. Hai Long was surprised by the little monkey's display of agility. The monkey's silhouette appeared behind him before he could react, hurled a barrage of fruit at the boy, and landed on a branch with a self-contented smile. Smarty glanced back and noticed Hai Long was no longer on his branch. However, his voice reverberated in the surroundings, asking the monkey to watch out for his grand technique. Hai Long had equipped a unique stone given by his master to help him gather qi. He used it to surprise Smarty, who dropped the fruit when he realized he was in trouble. Hai Long released the qi stone as a special projectile attack he had developed. The monkey was startled and quickly turned tail and dashed across the branch. Unfortunately, the edge snapped off and he crashed to the ground. Hai Long thought the monkey was playing possum as he landed on the ground and called his little buddy. When the dust cleared, his eyes witnessed a bloody scene. Smarty was gravely injured.